is Landry.Audio. Listen, like, and subscribe wherever you are. Today, I'm speaking with English heavy metal band Conjurer. Conjurer popped up on my Spotify, I want to say maybe 5 or 6 months ago, and they've been in pretty good rotation for me since then. And the opportunity to speak with Brady from the band came up as they're in the process of promoting a new album. And I was only given the album yesterday, so I'm actually only a couple of tracks into it, but it sounds it's I don't know. We'll talk about your sound because it's like it's post, it's proggy, it's kind of death as well. There's a whole bunch of things going on in there, but Brady's just dropped into the country and he is not necessarily having a great time at the moment because he's just getting over some COVID. So why don't we start there?
Yeah. So we were chatting just before this came on. My wife and I got COVID like a couple of weeks ago, and it's actually our first time getting it, which is insane because since the pandemic started, like my wife's American, so we've traveled back and forth between America a whole bunch. I've probably flown more since the pandemic than I have in the rest of my life put together.
Yeah, right.
And never got it. We were around people that had it, like her sister got it while we were in America, you know, all of these things, and never had it. And then we moved to London, and within a couple of months, boom, that's it. Like it's one of those things. And it was super brutal for me. Like there were 3 days when I woke up at like 5:30 a.m. I just could not move. I was like, I really have to pee, but it was like I was a passenger in my body. It felt like I was like I was like curled up like that inside my body, and it was just this shell that I couldn't move. And it took about 3 hours to convince myself to get out of bed and like stumble to the toilet. I sat down on the toilet, peed, and then I was like, I think I'm going back. I think this is it for me. This is where I spend the rest of my life, is sat on this toilet right now.
So
and it was brutal.
How many days did you get it for? So when I got it, I really only felt bad for 2, maybe 3 days, but I ended up having probably about 6 weeks of really bad fatigue afterwards, where I'd wake up at like 8, 7:30, and by like 11 in the morning, I'd have to go back to bed for an hour or two.
Whoa. I think we got it I had like a bit of a sore throat on the Sunday, and by Monday morning I was like, well, I've definitely got tonsillitis. Like I've had that a few times before. That's exactly what it felt like. But we're like, let's COVID test just to be safe. Immediately positive. Still something just cough now. Immediately positive, and then it wasn't until the next day when I woke up feeling like, oh god, I'm gonna die. So it was like 3 days of that. And then what was weird was by midday I was able to get out of bed, and by like 4 or 5 p.m. I felt okay. Like not right, but I could like walk around, and you know, we'd sit on the sofa and watch a show or something and eat some food, and then go to bed. And then the sweats kind of started again, and then I'd again wake up at 5 a.m. feeling like I couldn't move. It was so bizarre. But after about 3 or 4 days of feeling that bad, it started to get progressively better. And then we were testing negative by Sunday night. Monday we had like a photo shoot with Kerrang, and then Tuesday I flew to Tasmania.
Yeah, right. Okay. And that's where I've got you now, so we can see it looks like you're in a hotel room of some kind. So yes. We were talking very briefly about it. That's your first trip down under for you. So how are you? I mean, Tasmania is probably the smallest part of the country that you can get to. So.
Yeah, it was crazy. So we got the offer to come play Dark Mofo Festival, and never heard of it, didn't know what the deal was. And it was one of the things we're like, well, we can't fly to Australia. Like that's unreasonable. It's not going to happen. And then the offer came through, and it was reasonable suddenly. We were like, all right, we'll give it a bash. Being sick didn't help. But like in the whole lead up to it, everyone I spoke to was like, this is the best festival. This is like the Australian road ban. You will have the best time ever. You've got to go do it. Like, it's incredible. So we were a little bit hyped about it, and like we step off the third plane in 24 hours into Hobart Airport, and there's like a massive video screen behind the baggage collection that just says Dark Mofo on it. I was like, okay, I think this is going to be cool. And they had like a little beagle dog that was sniffing all of the bags that were coming off the baggage collection thing. So I was like, already I love Tasmanian security better than anything else in the world. Like that guy was great.
Have you seen Australian border security?
No.
We got one of those shows where they, all the people trying to bring in their drugs from Thailand and stuff like that. But the show, because of where we're based, ends every episode primarily is just them fining Asian people for bringing in undeclared food half the time.
Gee, so yeah, it's billed as like this going to be this big bust, but it's just kind of boring in the end.
A little bit, yeah, but it's one of those shows that's on, where they put it's in syndication now, so they have back-to-back episodes of it, and you're just I guess I'll watch this in between Bondi Rescue.
Yeah. But yeah, and like coming into Hobart, like we arrived at night, so it's basically always night here. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And everywhere is lit up red. Like there are these massive like red upside down crosses all over the town. Like it's absolutely insane. It's unlike any event I've ever been to. It's like completely taken over the city. Like by 4:30 p.m. it's dark and everything kind of starts. And yeah, I've been mainly bedridden since getting here, but I made it out last night to go to the pharmacy and get some food, and just that short walk out, the atmosphere is like palpable. It's crazy. So we're gonna go out tonight and go. They've got a thing called the Winter Feast, so we're gonna go check that out and yeah, just see what the deal is. But I'm just so blown away that we're actually out here doing
stuff
this,
again. So I don't know if they're on the bill, but I think, in my head, probably the biggest Tasmanian band that I can think from the scene is Croptic. I don't know if they're playing out there. I don't know if you know.
We toured with those guys in 2019.
Yeah, right. Okay. So I moved out here in 2004. I'm Canadian originally, and they're one of like the few Aussie band CDs that I had. I think they had just done their debut, and I think I picked it up in like 2001 to 2002. So you kind of forget, once you can get into the scene, I assume for you guys, 20 years later, you'll still be doing this as well.
I hope so. That was actually funny. I was thinking about them the other day. I was like, do I know anyone from Tasmania? And guys at Croptic came out. We did a couple of tours in America in 2019, and the first one, it was the second one, was us, Skeletal Remains, Psychroptic, Voivod, and Revocation. And yeah, the Psychroptic guys are so much fun. I could not believe, but most of those bands, like everyone's in death metal, has just been just a real laugh, which has been really nice to get to go out and tour. We've toured, I'm not gonna name any names, but we've toured with some bands that are just like not trying to have a good time.
Really?
So it just makes such a difference when you're with like-minded people,
Well, I was I think trying to remember, maybe it was a Kerrang interview or something. I think they had said that you had toured with Voivod, and I was like, that's an odd mix. Like I wouldn't expect you to be on a tour with them, I suppose.
It was weird. Like we were out in the US in March 2019, out with Rivers of Nile, and that tour was absolutely incredible. And while we were out there, our agent was like, hey, do you want to come and do this Revocation run at the end of the year? And we had our visas for a year, so we're like, we have to go and tour again to make it make sense. Yeah. So we accepted it. We're not really a straight death metal band, so we were trying.
Yeah, we'll get to that about this sort of sound that you have.
Yeah, but the tours that kept coming up were straight death metal, and we were like, we can't turn down offers to do legit tours in the US, so we did it. And then the lineup got fully announced, and it was like Revo, Voivod, co-headline, and
Even
man,
that's
it
odd
was
to me.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was super
Yeah.
weird. And
Yeah.
the crowd was a mixture of like younger people more into Revo and like slightly older heads that were into Voivod, but it kind of worked. Like for both of those bands, it made sense. For us, less so, but it was a cool tour. Like we managed to break even across both tours by the end of it, which for like our first time in the US, we thought we were all going to be like losing our cars and shit and having to remortgage the house to get back, but like we didn't all live with our parents at that point. Yeah, it was intense.
Well, there's another weird one when you sort of think. So there's one of the bigger festivals that's kind of at least coming back as we get out of this COVID. So there's a festival called Good Things, and I'm just taking a look at their lineup. And this is, you were sort of talking about strange bills, and this one has like Bring Me the Horizon, Deftones, Gojira.
Just saw this.
And No Effects. Like I've got a mate who really likes sort of, this sort of more punk music, but like it's just such an odd mixture for me to think that I would go like Soulfly and then No Effects or something like that. It's it's a bit out there for me.
I kind of love that though. Like we have always said that we want to play more mixed bills. Like we played a show in London with I guess technically a pop punk band called Nervous. And it was two accessible poppy kind of rock bands, us and then Nervous. And it was one of the best shows we've ever played. It was just like,
really,
all the kids there were like so down for it. Like everyone was jumping. We kind of like, we're really into like a lot of diverse music. So there's very probably less metal than anything else that gets played in the van when we're on tour.
Yeah, right.
So like the idea of playing those kind of shows is really up our street. But I remember we went into it and we were like, let's pick a really like impenetrable set list. Like we opened with our fastest song at the time, Wretch, straight into Frail, which was our slowest song at the time. Like really like no flow or anything, just like as impenetrable as possible. And people were so into it. Like I felt bad halfway through that we hadn't like taken it more seriously almost.
How do you, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, how do you find, like I lived over in London for a few years, and again, the attitudes around music is different. So this that I'm Canadian originally, so North American, and everything is sort of siloed. You know what I mean? It's like you're into your death metal, you're into your thrash, you're into your black, and you kind of you get kind of pigeonholed into that. And Europe is a lot more like as example, you might run into a 40 or 50-year-old guy who's listening to you in Saxon at the same time, if you know what I mean. Do you find that the audiences are different, or did you find it a little bit more difficult to break through like into North America and those sorts of places?
Because we've just done the two tours and we've never had any real like release or any kind of push over there until this record. Like I think we were just lucky that the people at those shows turned up and were really into it. I do think the typical genre boundaries matter less and less in the UK these days. I think because there is less and less money in music, people are less and less inclined to like there are no safe bets anymore. Like about a festival like Bloodstock in the UK that would book, extreme metal and power metal.
Yeah, I've been there.
Now are diversifying a bit more because people aren't, they can't book a straight death metal lineup and expect to sell the amount of tickets they need. They need to try and appeal to those different audiences. Everyone's strapped for cash. No one is like really is cash fluid right now. So I think that diversification is partly down to necessity, because of people like trying to sell more tickets and appeal to kind of broader audiences. But also, I think I'm 27, and I have grown up with Spotify being really my main way of accessing music. So at any given time, I can listen to any song within reason that's ever been recorded. So it would make sense that my generation are coming through with less boundaries between music. Like, it's like my dad would listen to the radio,
buy a record or something, and that's what you get.
And if you buy an Iron Maiden record and you love it, and you've only got the money to buy one more record the next week, you're going to buy the Slayer record or the Metallica record. Like, you're going to do that. Whereas I've been able to pretty much, certainly in my like living memory, been able to listen to whatever I wanted. And like now I buy records, and I'm like a collector of music. You kind of go through the phases, but I still listen. My main listening is Spotify. So whenever a new record comes out, I'll put it on. And I think that this generation is like so used to flicking between genres and between styles and between scenes that it makes sense that the shows are kind of starting to follow that a little bit more. That's something that we're really passionate about, is trying to get more mixed bills and play on weirder festivals and play, try and take out. I hate it when you go to a show and you see a band and you're like, all four of you are wearing Slayer t-shirts. You're going to sound like Slayer. I've just watched 4 baby Slayer support bands, and between every band they've played Slayer over the PA. Like, it's...
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't mind that. I hear where you're coming from.
Yeah. And honestly, even like substitute Slayer for any band, it's that overload of one thing just doesn't do it for me. So like, we have a pre-show playlist that is, it's basically a Spotify playlist that all 4 of us can add songs to, and it's everything from Carly Rae Jepsen and Robbie Williams to Sumac and System of a Down.
Robbie Williams, right.
Yeah, it's the full gamut. At our headline shows, we hit shuffle and play, and between bands, that's what plays, and it is pure potluck as to what you get. And our sound guys had complaints from people in the crowd who've gone up to him and been like, "Who's playing this pop shit?" And he's like, it's the band. Like, this is Conjurer's playlist. I don't know what you want. Like, we are so tired of metal being this like closed book that is, you turn up to the Metallica show in your Metallica shirt. Like, it's just, despite the fact that we all love Metallica, we actually listen to quite a lot of it on tour. Like, it has to be more than that. And I think you can only really create great music if you open up your mind and your ears and your life to different influences. Like, I say, I can tell the bands that write black metal and sit and listen to black metal all the time because it sounds like black metal.
There's a couple of things that I wanted to ask you out of there, but now that we're talking about sort of opening up your sound and kind of getting rid of boundaries, I think that's probably a good place, because like me, there's got to be a lot of people out there who might be listening to this or experience you for the first time because you've only got a couple of full-length albums and one that we're pushing. But in terms of your sound, I immediately, before I even think of Black or Death, I think proggy and open in a lot of parts where it sort of breaks up. So when I think of prog, again, I'm 40, you said you're 27. So I think of bands like Opeth. When I started listening to you on the new record, I can hear elements of Converge in there. I hear a little bit of stuff like Candiria, who we don't hear a lot of from these days. There's clearly a lot of death that it's on both albums that I've heard, it's quite an overbearing, oppressive sound. There's not a lot of positivity, I guess, that comes out of what you guys are writing, with some elements of those notes that have a little bit of black metal. And I guess what I'm saying, because as you identified, like for people like me, we go to the record store, and you'd pretty much pick an album based on what the cover artwork listened to, and you kind of and so you know, your what you listen to again is sort of sits around. So it's probably good to say, like, you know, how did you guys even come up with this sort of sound? Because I assume you're listening to different stuff, and it really reflects on what you're writing.
Yeah, I think in terms of our listening habits, there's so few bands or artists that all four of us agree on. It's like almost a bit of an ongoing joke. Like, to get a full 4 out of 4 on any artist is almost unheard of. So everything that we do tends to be a bit of a compromise, which is endlessly frustrating. The way it kind of started, myself and Dan, I guess I was playing in a pop punk band, and it was like, like Green Day meets The Darkness. It was kind of like glam rock pop punk. It was.
I quite like The Darkness, though. They're all right.
I love The Darkness. They're like my favorite band. But I was doing that, and I loved it. It was great fun. But like, there's like videos of us where it's like we're all out on tour, and I'm like wearing a Behemoth shirt at the show, or like, you know, like it was just like not what I was passionate about. So I was like, I want to start this band. I've gone from being into metalcore to like discovering bands like Conjurer and Black Dahlia Murder, and like kind of like the starter death metal bands. And
call them the gateway bands.
Yeah, gateway bands. And I was discovering all of that stuff, and Dan, who I'd kind of looked up to for a while, who was in a bunch of local bands, hit me up and was like, hey, I saw your Facebook post. I really want to start a band as well. It's a bit more in that realm. And we started hanging out and jamming and writing, and he brought me bands like Yob and Pallbearer and Electric Wizard, and started introducing kind of like doom to me, and then bands like Down and Arm for Apocalypse and kind of all the more sludge kind of stuff, and kind of learned about all of these genres while we were writing and while we were hanging out and getting to know each other and eating far too much takeaway food. And we got to the point where there was so much good stuff that we were like listening to and passionate about, it started to bleed into the writing. And there were like the first couple of songs we wrote were like way more death metal and way more like Revocation, Black Dahlia Murder kind of style. And then Dan wrote Behold the Swine, that was the first track on our first EP. And I was like, I don't know what this is. It's not quite death metal. It's not quite this or that, but I love it. Like, whatever this is what I want to do. And we just started writing, and our focus was more on how do we make each individual song as good as it can possibly be, and not really on what it sounded like. And I think the mixture of focusing on the songs and then all of these new influences and sounds kind of coalesced, and we wrote the EP and the majority of Maya around the same time, and then a bunch of other songs that never kind of went anywhere. And yeah, there was never a thought of what kind of band are we. It was just, here's a bunch of stuff we like, let's see what happens. And like some of the bands you mentioned, from listening to Páthos, like Converge are a huge one that I got into through Dan and kind of learned about. And even then it was like only really like Axe to Fall and All We Love We Leave Behind were the records that I was getting into then. And it's only since then that I've kind of been able to go back and delve deeper. So for us, and kind of to this day, there's never been a direct, we want to sound like X, other than this band Arm for Apocalypse, who were like, we ripped off a bunch, especially in the early days, and who've now become very good friends of ours, which we are, you know, is insane to me. But they were like the main influence for what we actually sound like. But outside of that, it was just, we always used to say this quote, I can't remember who it was by, but it was like, if you rip off 4 bands, you sound like those 4 bands. If you rip off 50 bands, you've made your own sound. Like it's that kind of approach. And like now, there's never there are some ideas where I'm like, I have no idea how we're going to get that into a song. But the last track on the album, Cracks in the Pyre, we had that, like, the clean intro, sounds like an acoustic ballad. Had that for ages, and I was like, I love this. Let's try and find a way to make it work. And like the intro to Choke from Maya, that's all kind of like major and doomy and all of that stuff, that was a bit that Dan used to play all the time, and I'm like, this is amazing. Does not sound like us. Like, how do we make it work? And it's, for us, it's always been about making each individual song work on its own, and if all 4 of us love it, and if we're all happy with it, and if it, you know, is exciting and invigorating in some way, that's how we know it sounds like us. And so, yeah, like, people always, you know, talk about the mixing of genres and this or that. It's just never a conscious thing to go, oh, let's put this in here or that in here. It's every single time, it's, well, where should this song go? Where does it feel natural for this next part to go? And I think that's what we're going to try and continue doing, is to just keep writing things that feel right and feel true to what we want to do, which is write exciting music, and kind of go from there.
And how did you guys get picked up? Because I know Nuclear Blast, I think they take unsolicited demos. Did you go through that process, or how did you end up getting found by them?
So we were on Holy Raw Records in the UK for our first 2 releases, and they, I sent them our demos years ago, and they were like, these are fine, whatever. What they always said was, again, this is like a small independent UK label, was, if you want us to take you seriously, we need to see you popping up on bills all over the place. We need to see you playing with our bands. We need to get recommendations for you from other people that don't know you, that we respect within the industry. Once we start hearing your name everywhere, then we'll start to take notice. And that's kind of what happened. We just did like hundreds of gigs all the time. We were trying to play with Holy Raw bands because we loved that scene that had cultivated around that label, and eventually got picked up and all of that. And then the plan was to do a co-release, Holy Raw in the UK and Europe, and Nuclear Blast in America, because the people that ran Holy Raw had reached out to Monty Connor at Nuclear Blast in the US, and he loved what the label was doing and had kind of started this collaborative relationship. And it was all kind of in the background. So we met with Monty a bunch of times when we were in the US, which was insane on its own.
I'd love to I'd like to have him on the show, because he is like the epitome of our, he's signed everybody. He's Roadrunner, right? So.
I'm sure he'd love to do it. I'll send him your details when
cool.
when I'm done. I'll see if we can get him on. But yeah, so we met with him a bunch of times, and he just got what we were about kind of from jump. And Holy Raw ended up folding due to the head of the label basically turned out to be an abuser.
Right.
And yeah, that was a really shit time for everyone involved. And kind of off the back of that, we were kind of sat in this weird place where we're like, well, what do we do, you know? so I actually ended up speaking to a bunch of labels. So I had meetings with like Metal Blade, E1, Pelagic, Church Road, which was Justine, who
Pelagic, yeah,
worked
right.
at Husky.
Have you heard of a band called Low by chance?
I have heard of them because two friends of mine who run a podcast in the UK went to see them the other day and said that they were amazing.
Yeah, I can't remember. I saw them open for someone a few years ago, and I think they're signed to Pelagic because that was the first time I had heard of that label. And
Yeah.
I'll send you through a couple of tracks because they haven't really broke out beyond being, I guess, more of what we would consider a local band. But man, they absolutely rip, and they've got a really cool music video where again it's that sort of a lot of that sort of like really chaotic elements of converge with some elements of breakdowns in it. I think you'd be pretty into it.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, we were in the position where a lot of what we do, we like to cultivate long-term relationships. So I just don't really see the point of flitting between labels or PRs or booking agents or whatever. Like, I want to work with someone long-term and like develop together. So we were like, I spoke to so many labels and was like, look, I'm speaking to as many labels as possible. I want to get the right home for this band that we can just stay in one place and kind of like develop long term, and someone that respects the fact that we are the art before everything else. So the music informs every single decision we make, from merchandise to touring to everything. All we really give a shit about is the music. And honestly, pretty much every label we spoke to were 100% on board with that idea. Like, we'd have been happy to sign with any of the labels we spoke to. They were all fantastic. We just had that long-standing relationship with Nuclear Blast, and they brought in Nathan Phillips, who started Basic Records in the UK. He now works for Nuclear Blast, runs their UK A&R, and he was amazing. And kind of just the whole team around Nuclear Blast, as soon as the previous label folded, they were really keen to sign us worldwide, which is what we ended up doing. But yeah, from our first initial conversation, we had like 30-minute calls that lasted 3 hours. Like, they were so invested in what we were doing and so keen to help us realize the music that we want to make. It was kind of a no-brainer. They, even from the start, they were like, we don't need to hear demos or anything. Like, we just want to just send us the record when it's done. Like, they had that much faith in us. And
can I ask how that's organized these days? So, like, because going back 20 years ago, the label would front all the costs they bring into the studio to do all that. Now, are they still providing advances? Are you doing the record out of pocket and they're just releasing it? Like,
so we had previously with our previous labels, we would cover all the studio costs. Not my phone there. We would cover all the studio costs ourselves, and yeah, it would pretty much be all done ourselves. Then we would get a small advance and then a decent split of profit. So I think we got a couple of £1,000 for around Maya, but it was like a 50-50 profit split. So we'd broken even really quickly and were like getting royalties. So that was really cool.
Yeah, right.
And with Nuclear Blast, we got a decent advance, but due to us getting contracts sorted and like all of the legal bullshit, it didn't end up coming through until we completely finished the record. So we actually did pay for everything kind of from money that we'd made touring. And then the advance came through right when our bank account hit zero, basically.
Right. Okay.
but it's kind of means we're in a position where now we have money to go out and tour, and if we lose a little bit of money on a tour, or if something goes wrong, we have a bit of a nest egg to actually make sure, you know, that we can get through. So we're actually in a really good position now off the back of that. But I hear there are deals that go all kinds of ways. You know, there are bands that are getting huge amounts of money and never being able to pay it back. There are bands that are in tons of debt. There are, every situation now feels completely unique. We are in the position where we have absolutely zero debt. There is the advance to pay back with the label, but they are confident. What they said to us was like all of their offers are based on them being confident that we will recoup within a reasonable amount of time. So yeah, we're in a pretty comfortable position, which is amazing to be able to say in 2022. Like, you know, I know COVID has decimated so many bands. We were lucky that it fell just in between album cycles for us, so we were able to like write and record through COVID, and now we're kind of coming out the other side of that. We're putting the record out and touring, you know?
So today, and I'm so curious about that, because again,
Yeah.
at my age, I grew up in an area where it was like you release a CD and you sell, 250,000 of those in the tour, and then the label pays for your bus and they put you out on tour, and you go out on tour because it sells the records, and all of that is like completely out the window now. And because a couple of years ago, I spoke with Brian Slagle from Metal Blade, and he was telling me, he was saying Metal Blade is more profitable now than they've ever been. I was saying, well, how is that possible? Because all I keep hearing about is how nobody makes money off streaming services. And he's like, oh, but when you complement it with like limited edition runs, and it seems that a lot of labels are now invested in the touring and the merchandise as well to pick up some of that. So I think they call them 360 deals or something. Is that kind of how it's structured as well for you guys?
Not for us, no. I personally think 360 deals are bullshit, as do most of the people that I've spoken to within the industry. And I think that once people start trying to take a cut of stuff that they've had no hand in, I think that's when the model falls apart. So Nuclear Blast have said that they can potentially provide some tour support in terms of cash if we get the right tour offer, and it's something that is, like, let's say we get asked to go out with Trivium and there is an upfront bus cost of £20,000 for a 3-month tour, whatever, the kind of numbers pulling out my ass. If we can't front that, then that's something we could go to the label and say, hey, is this something we can talk about? Right. Outside of that, they are hands off with merch, with touring, with anything like that, and it is purely down to the actual records themselves. I am really wary of, like I say, working with anyone that's trying to take a cut off something they haven't directly influenced. So like we deal with all of our own merchandise. We've just started working with Night Shift for the US and Evil Greed for Europe, who do our merchandising there. But like all of our pre-orders for the album, like we're shipping out ourselves. All of the merchandise we do in the UK, it's all shipped out of Connor's house. So we try and keep it as in-house as possible. In terms of kind of the financial side, everything, we got the payment for the advance for the record, and that's the only money that comes in outside of money that we make touring.
And is it a pretty even split? Because like I guess these days, obviously they're pushing like limited edition vinyls, and they're streaming, there's ticketing and merchandise. Is it a fairly even split, or is one really dominant over the other as how you make your money?
We make, like, our own merchandise is above and beyond where we make the most money.
And I assume that's just because of the margins in it, because it's like what, $6 to do a hoodie, and you can sell it for 40 quid or something. Yeah,
we try and we try and keep prices low, and we actually get higher quality merch, so we'll pay slightly more per unit to get better stuff. But yeah, that's absolutely where we make the money. In terms of like selling music, it's vinyl 100% is like our target market, and we'll make significantly more on that than anything else. A really interesting thing, I think, though, is that the amount of people I see complaining about streaming, we have relatively modest streaming numbers. Like I think we have like 50,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. We still get like royalty checks from streaming, and it's not the equivalent of selling that many records, but it's not nothing. Like bands talk about it like it's nothing. I feel like we got a couple of £1,000 the other, it was either a quarter or a month or something, and I'm like, yeah, it's a drop in the ocean compared to what it would have been 50 years ago if we were like selling all of those records. But the benefit that we get is like this conversation right now. We popped up on your Spotify.
You just, yeah. I had an album on, and then I went, "Who's this?" And then it liked the song, and then there you go. I think it's so different now, where it's easy to get in front of people if you have something to offer. I think is the big difference.
Yeah, I think that's what people don't look at. The flip side of streaming is that, like, I can go onto our Spotify artists right now and it'll say there are 5 people in Azerbaijan listening to your music right now. And I'm like, that's fucking insane.
That heavy metal mecca.
Yeah, but like the fact that of our top cities, like London is usually in the top 5. Yeah. 4 of the rest are usually in America. Like, we have more people in San Diego listening to our band than we do like an hour up the road in Birmingham. Like it is crazy that to see the note. And like with Apple Music, it gives you all the stats for Shazam as well.
Okay.
And like
Shazam is where if you don't know it, you listen to it and it tells you.
Listen to it. Okay.
Yeah. So you've got heaps of people going, I like this, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah. And we had like 100 people in Los Angeles last month Shazammed our new single. And I'm like, 1, that's cool in itself. 2, there are people playing our single somewhere in public, like in LA. Like things like that just completely blow my mind. And this is all stuff that previous generations never got to experience. It means that we can go out and we can play in fucking bumfuck nowhere, like West Virginia, and have like 3 people come out to the show that are like, yeah, I heard you guys online, I love the band, let me spend $100 on merch, and like here's a bag of weed and a 6-pack that I brought you. And like this literally happened. This guy drove 6 hours each way on a work night just to come see us do a 30-minute support slot. Like, and all of that is because they listened to us on streaming. They didn't have to pay, $20 for the CD of a band that they've never heard of in, whatever the equivalent of HMV is. Like it has its downfalls for sure, but if what you really care about is getting your music out there and reaching people, I think it's one of the best ways of doing that ever. Like I'm really thankful for streaming.
So you had mentioned that like with the deal with Nuclear Blast, they're not really involved in your touring or what you do. So how does that sort of change with what you guys do? Because does that mean you're out there effectively trying to source your own tours? Because, again, the way that it used to be, you wait for the label to try to get you on the biggest bill possible. Yeah. So how does that work for you now?
So we have a booking agent. Do you know the band Rolo Tomasi?
No.
So they're like a huge UK mathcore band that we're huge fans of and friends of. Their keyboard player works for Atonal, who is a booking agency in the UK. So he goes out and gets us stuff like this, festivals, tours, all of that. Our books are headline runs, and is kind of like hustling to get us all that stuff that people typically think about the label doing way back when. And so he will get a percentage of he'll get a percentage. Oh, hold on 1 second. Sorry, we're just planning what's happening for the day. I don't want everyone to leave without me. I get lonely.
It'd just be funny because, as I said, like these go up on YouTube and you just feel like, oh, hold on, I'll be back with you in a second. That's all right. So it's a booking agent effectively, but that's now been it's been externalized from the deal these days.
100%, yes. So we will have label, booking, and PR all kind of separate at the minute, and yeah, it's weird because I did it all myself for the first like 3 or 4 years that we were a band, and it was just like messaging every local promoter in the country, sending them our crap demo that we recorded ourselves at home and being like, hey, can you give us a show? And like, yeah, like the overwhelming answer was yes, which was wild. Coming from the metalcore scene where like it was like, okay, how many tickets can you sell on a Wednesday night in Shrewsbury that you know is like a 5-hour drive for you and you've never been there before? And I'm like, probably 1 ticket, and that'll be my mum who will drive us. Like, you know.
So
like,
what's changed? Because you're saying now with the band now that you or is it because you've got a deal that, or because you're saying you're doing it before? So what changed from having to say, unless you can guarantee these advanced ticket sales, to just saying like, yeah, we'll have you play?
The genre and the scene. So I think it was the metalcore vibe was just, we're not interested unless you can sell 30 tickets on X night. As soon as we started playing doom, sludge, stoner shows, they were just like, cool, we like your music, come play, and we'll pay you properly and we'll feed you. And like just so
it's just a reputation of metalcore, I guess.
Honestly, like finding this scene, we like the first time we played in Manchester, we played an all-dayer. It was like 30 bands, 10-minute changeovers, like it was insane. But we turn up to this venue and we play to like 150 people at 4 PM, and we were like, what the fuck, this is amazing. Like what? And like we sold more merch than we had in the previous like 6 months on that, in that one day. And that was like us really discovering, especially in the north of England, this stoner doom scene where they were just so welcoming to us, despite the fact that we were a little bit more death metal, a little bit more black metal, a little bit more extreme than the bands we were playing with. But it just kind of worked. So we were kind of seen as a doom sludge band for years without really quite fitting into that. And then, you know, we started to branch out a bit more and play some other shows. But yeah, it was really cool to discover this scene. And then like after a while, we had a really big booking agent. We were working with Paul Ryan from UTA, who it was frustrating because we were too small of a band to really, like, he books for Trivium and Architects and Lamb of God and all of these bands. We were too small of a band really to be working with him. So like 6 months down the line, it was like he basically was like, I can't give you guys the time that you need as a band to kind of develop, so you know we should kind of call this relationship. That happened the same day that we got the offer for the first US tour, and the next day James from Atonal hit me up and was like, hey, you know, I've loved the band for so long, I put you on a few shows with Riley Tomasi, like please can I book for you, like I think I would do a great job. And we were like, cool, let's give it a go. And since then it's been a great relationship, and he's really helped. You know, he has the contacts that I just don't have the time to develop, or has taken that whole side of things off our plate, which has been absolutely amazing. So yeah, we finding the right team, I think, is so important.
You had mentioned when we were talking, like the with the labels that you were talking to, the goal is to develop and work with someone long term. So what sort of what becomes the goals of a band like yours? Because I mean, without trying to make it disparaging, it's like we know kind of how big our scene is and everything. It's like what does that sort of mean of where you would hope to be in 10 years or something like that?
I think we very quickly threw out all ideas of like, what could this band be, or like what, you know, our potential or any of that stuff. Because as soon as we have an idea of what we're going to do, something else comes up, or something like 6 months ago, if you told me I'd be sat in a hotel room in Tasmania doing an interview like before we go and play a podcast, I'd have said that you were insane. Like it's so, we've been so lucky that the reception to our music has been almost overwhelmingly positive, that we keep our goals when we started were to record an album and play at the Underworld in London, both of which we did. And that was kind of all that we wanted to do. I guess maybe like play a festival as well. And we've done that kind of many times over. Everything we do now is a bonus. Like it's like the when you finish a video game, you get the credits roll, and then you get like the post game. Like we're in the post game now. Like we're just happy to be here. We're doing this because we love it. And I think the idea is the second we stop loving it is when we know it shouldn't carry on anymore, or the second that we write something and think, yeah, that'll do. Like if it's not great, and if the passion isn't there, then that's when we call it a day. Because it's just not worth doing. Like you said, there's a limit to this scene. Yeah, there's a chance we could make a living from doing this, but like we're at a point where we break even. It doesn't really cost us anything to do on a personal level, but it's so much effort, and it takes up all of my mental capacity for doing anything. If I didn't love it, it would be insane to be doing this. You know, I have a really nice life outside of the band, and I could hang out with my wife and, you know, be just going to the movies and living a normal life, and I'd be really happy with that.
I was going to ask you then, because what is the size of the band? Because as you had mentioned, because like a lot of the groups that we listen to, it's like they would like to do this full time, but at the end of the day, you know, they do the tour for like 3 months, and then they got to go back and work a job somewhere. So it's like, are you guys all in at the moment? Like, is this a 24/7 thing, or is it sort of a cycle where you go, okay, we've got, you know, we're doing this 4 to 5 month tour, and then we got to figure out what we're going to do after that?
It's kind of a bit of both. Like the rest of the guys all have day jobs. Connor works for Apple in just like an Apple store. Dan works for his parents' motorbike shop, and Noah, who's just joined on drums, he teaches music, teaches drums, so, and does session work. But so like truthfully, outside of Connor, everyone's flexible. I am about to I was working in music management for a while, and then got a warehouse job during the pandemic, and now I'm gonna go back into music, but like something that I can do from the road is kind of where I'm looking at the minute. So we're in the position where we don't really make solid plans. We go, right, what is available for the year? What can we do? Let's plan that out, and then be open to opportunities. Like, I know we're going to go back to the US, and like, to make it worth the visas, we're going to go back twice at least next year. I think the Dark Mofo promoter
because they're on 3-year visas or something, isn't it, to get into the US or something?
Just
like that?
1 year for an artist visa, and it's like cost us £6,000 last time just to get the visas.
Right. No kidding.
So it's really expensive. So we're gonna go do that, and then we will. I think the promoter from Dark Mofo wants to bring us out to do like a mainland Australia tour, assuming we don't suck tomorrow. So hopefully
I'm sure it will be fine.
We'll see. Yeah, so we'll go and do that, and then like if we do Australia, we'll probably do Japan as part of that because it's so close comparatively, and like we know we need to go and do Europe again because so all of these things like build up, and then it starts to become a really busy year. So it's we can all manage our holiday other than Connor, who realizes he will have to leave his job at some point. Like he's not here for this festival. We've got a fill-in from Australia because he was like, because of the way it fell with his holiday, he would have to quit his job to come and do one 40-minute set in Tasmania, which like he's really gutted he can't be here, but it makes more sense while we're not really busy for the rest of the year to keep his job, and then when we get into a full touring cycle to potentially lose it.
I remember, I can't remember hearing a band story. Is it, who am I thinking of? Is it not, who did the album Black Jazz? Is it Shinedown?
Shining.
I'm thinking? Shining, sorry, yeah. Not the, they're another band that I really like that's sort of a bit avant-garde out there. And I think it might have been a Bloodstock or something where I saw them. And because they came on, you know, at like 11 in the morning or something like that.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and they were saying, I think it was them that I saw, and they said, you know, you don't even have an idea of where you're going on these festivals because they're out in the middle of nowhere. They go, you fly into a city, they put you on a bus, the bus drives you up, and they go, you're on in 10 minutes, you play your set, and then you drive back to the airport because you're in Helsinki like tomorrow or something like that.
Yeah.
It was a little bit interesting. Do you find that's sort of the same way? What I guess European bus tours are probably a lot easier than Australian, where you have to fly from city to city everywhere.
Yeah, we've only done the one like proper bus tour, which was absolutely amazing. Like getting to wake up in the city you're in and like getting to go to sleep straight after the show is the dream. But yeah, I think it's a little different for us because we don't fly in for these festival runs. So like we have this tomorrow, we get back home Monday lunchtime, then we leave for Hellfest Friday morning, play that Saturday, get back Sunday, and then we have like 4 weeks until our next festival, and then a week is we have 4 weeks, and then like 2 in a week, and it's never like that full bang 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 run. So I think we avoid that kind of monotony of like, oh, I've woken up, I'm on in 10 minutes, I don't know where I am kind of vibe. That is like, I feel like that's the stereotype for a touring band, whereas it's a lot more calculated for us, which is good and bad. Like this Hellfest show, like we play at like 3 p.m. next Saturday, but it's a full 3 days worth of travel, like 11-12 hour drive each way to make it work.
But that's pretty cool because at something like Hellfest, even if you play at 3, I'd assume that you'd still probably have a few thousand people listen
yeah, like it's gonna be insane. It's one of those things that like we could be first on and it would be round. Like it's honestly been like that for the majority of festivals we've done. We've been really lucky that we've even if we've been opening the stage, like it's been pretty busy. Like I can't even think of the last show that we went to do that we didn't think was actually worth doing, you know, which is an amazing situation to be in. And we, trust me, like for the first 3 years of doing this, played a hell of a lot of those shows where you like drive 4 hours and turn up and play to one person and you suck as well. Like that's the worst bit, is like we weren't very good. So it's like we've played to one person, we've disappointed them. Like it's I think we're just quite lucky that we're in the position now where everything we do is pretty sick and we are confident enough in what we do to know that we can turn up and just give a good performance no matter the circumstances. Like my voice is going to be shot tomorrow, but outside of that, like it's going to be a great performance and it's going to be a great show. I think that's the goal, is to be in that position where like you can be confident whatever you go and do is going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I think it's probably time to start winding down. But I was just going to ask you before we finish. I mean, it was interesting what you had said earlier on about how, you know, there's a bit of an expanse because there's not enough kind of money to be made in the genre. I was just, you know, at my age, I'm sitting at home all these days. You're out there. Do you not think at the moment that there's much of a big scene, or do you think sort of metal's kind of gone back under the radar at the moment?
I can't speak for what it's like for you guys. In the UK, the scene's huge. Like it's really, it's a really exciting time to be a heavy band within UK music. Like there's so many bands like Venom Prison, Employed to Serve, Svalbard, Sleep Token, Malevolence, like these bands that are, especially bands that have been around in the scene for a while, that are just coming out and absolutely smashing it out of the park. I think it's one of the best times to be in a band, as long as you're not trying to make any money from it. Yeah, and that's the
bit of a tough sell.
Yeah, that's the trick. Like, we've done way cooler stuff than any band I, you know, have ever known growing up or ever been a part of, or any, you know, my friends' bands growing up. Like, I've done far more than
more opportunities have been presented comparatively to
100%
a few years ago.
But
right.
My friend that plays in a Britpop tribute band has made infinitely more money than me.
Yeah.
From just doing that every weekend, you know? So it's a tricky one. I think you give me the opportunity to do it again, I would do exactly the same thing all over again. Like, I would go and play all these cool shows for no money. Like, absolutely 100%. And I think the majority of people my age that are in these function bands and people that are actually making a stable living from playing music that they're not super passionate about probably would also trade it to go and lose money to go and do cool shit. Like, I think it is in your nature as a musician to want to go and travel and play shows and meet people and do cool shit, you know? Like, that's it. And this is what we were sat on the second flight. It was like 13 hours. We were 4 hours in, and Dan was sat next to me, and he looked over and he was like, I don't ever want to do this again. Like, and we both fell asleep for 8 hours, and now we're like really stoked to go and like get out and see the city and have some beers and just like hang out and have fun before we go and play a really fucking cool show. Like, it's the give and take of, yes, this really fucking sucks, but I'm not losing my arm to do it, and I'm out here having fun with my friends playing cool shows. Like, there is nothing I would rather do in the world. And like, when I look back in 50 years time and I'm like, oh yeah, do you remember when we went to Tasmania to play? Like, I'm going to remember the cool show and the stuff that we did. I'm not going to remember like scraping together a couple of quid to get a McDonald's at the airport or like being on an uncomfortable flight. Like, you know, this is, you get one life, and if you're bothered the entire time about making money, you lose the opportunity to do the stuff that actually matters, you know?
That's a good outlook. It's a good outlook.
Yeah, 100%. And if I was bothered about money, I certainly wouldn't be making metal.
yeah, it's a fair, maybe a Britpop tribute band.
100%. That's the one. Yeah.
All right.
It would be soul crushing.
Awesome, Brady. Well, thanks for speaking with me today. Well, I
No
guess
worries.
we'll log off, and as I said, I'll speak to you just for a couple more minutes. I'll send you a couple links to a few of these guys, and then I don't know, we'll take it from there. And all the best, man. I'm enjoying what I'm hearing from you guys. So hopefully, you know, a lot of bands have a breakout one with the second album. So hopefully that, or you know, full length. So hopefully that works for you guys as well.
We'll see. Thanks so much for your time.
Cheers. All right.